Hello, welcome to my kitchen. Today I'm making some easy scratch-made cinnamon rolls. Don't be intimidated by this recipe. This is such a great recipe and it's almost foolproof. I'm using some rapid rise yeast. This is called bread machine yeast. There's no proofing. You add it right to your flour, mix it all together. You only have to let it rise once, and there's only a few easy steps and you've got delicious cinnamon rolls in about an hour. Yes, scratch made. Now I'm starting with my wet ingredients. I have 1 1/4 cups of water, and I heated this water in the microwave for 2 minutes. I choose to mix my wet ingredients first because if they get too hot, then I'm going to give it time to cool down. And if it gets too cold, I can just put it back in the microwave for a few seconds. Now I'm adding powdered milk. You can use any type that you want, Carnation, your store brand, it doesn't matter. Or you can substitute the liquid in this recipe for whole milk. But I will tell you that when making breads, powdered milk works the best. There's no substitution. Now I'm using 1/2 cup. I make so much bread that I actually buy this in bulk, which is a good thing because it's a great staple to have, especially when the store shelves are empty, which they have been recently. Just gonna whisk this in, and now I'm adding 2 tablespoons of butter. If you get a little more, that's okay. And I want this butter to melt, and I'm just gonna let it sit while I mix together my dry ingredients. So out of the way that goes, and here comes the dry. I'm starting with bread flour. Bread flour makes the best bread. You can use all-purpose flour, but I strongly suggest that you don't. Bread flour is not much more expensive than your all-purpose, but it makes a huge difference in the breads that you make. And I'm using 3 cups. Now for the yeast. I love this bread machine yeast. It has really encouraged me to make homemade breads because it's so easy. Used to, you would have to add the yeast and let it rise 2 to 3 times. But with this, you only have to let it rise once, which is wonderful. I want to go ahead and get it mixed all throughout my flour. One thing that you have to have when you're using yeast is sugar. The yeast feeds on the sugar, so it is an important additive. And I'm adding 4 tablespoons or 1/4 cup. We're making cinnamon rolls, so we want the bread to just have a little hint of sweetness to it. And last, I'm adding a teaspoon of salt. Now, let me check my wet ingredients. You want this the temperature that you would serve a baby's bottle. That's always how I remember it. You don't want it too hot, you don't want it too cool. So if it's a little hot, then just give it a little minute and let it cool off. If you get your liquid too hot, it'll kill your yeast. If it's too cool, then your yeast won't rise. Now that sounds complicated, but if you'll remember the baby's bottle, I assure you it will work every time. Now, I'm ready to add the wet to the dry. I'm just going to create a small well in the bottom of my bowl, and in this goes. Just going to stir it up. There we go. How easy was that? Now I've got one more ingredient to add to this dough, and that is 1 egg. It's better if you let your egg sit out to room temperature because you don't want to cool this dough off. If you grab your egg straight out of the refrigerator, just put it in some warm water and let it sit for a minute or so, and it'll be just fine. This egg is going to give this dough such a great texture and rich flavor. Just want to stir this all in. There we go. Now I'm going to pull this out of the way, and I've got a good, clean, sanitized counter. Your counter is your best friend when you're making bread. It's the best thing to knead it on and to roll it out on, so don't be afraid to use your counter. Now I'm going to take a little bit more of my flour, and now this, just a little bit more on the top, and I'm going to start pulling this together. I just want to create a nice little ball. There we go. This is perfect. Now I'm going to set my timer for 10 minutes. I'm taking this bowl and I'm putting it right over my dough. In 10 minutes, I'm going to come back and I'll show you what we're going to do next. My dough has a few more minutes, and I'm going to show you how to put together the filling. I have some dark brown sugar. I use dark brown in almost everything that calls for brown sugar. I just love the flavor. The molasses makes it the dark brown color, so the darker the color, the more molasses. I'm using a cup, and I'm using a tablespoon of ground cinnamon. That cinnamon smells so good. Smelling like Cinnabon in here already. Now for the fun part. Just want to get a nice healthy dose of flour on this, and it's time to start kneading our dough. This is an important step that you don't want to skip. Personally, I absolutely love to knead bread dough. I just think it's relaxing, and there's just something so satisfying about making your own bread. Now, this should not feel sticky. If it's sticking to your surface or your hands, then you need to add more flour. What you want to do is get this in a nice oblong shaped roll and take your palms and push into it. Push into it, and then take your fingers and bring your dough back. And then twist again, fold, and knead. And you're going to do this for a good 6 to 8 minutes. We want this dough to be nice and smooth. This is something that you can get those kids involved with. I was talking to my 2 oldest grandsons the other day. I just miss them so much. We used to live not far from each other at all, and they were at my house all the time. Now, it takes a long plane ride to see them, but that's okay. They were saying, "Oh, Nana, we miss your cinnamon rolls." No matter what, we always made cinnamon rolls when they came over. And it was inevitable that the 2 of them, 2 boys, we're going to argue over who got the most frosting. Oh, I miss those days. I think that this dough is perfect. It's nice and smooth. There's no tackiness. It is perfection right there. Look at that. Isn't it beautiful? Now, I've got my rolling pin and I am going to roll this out. Look at this beautiful dough. I'm going to roll this to about a 1/2 inch thickness and into a 9 by 12 inch sheet. This looks pretty good. I'm not going to put a ruler to it. I am just going to wing it. Perfect. Now I have some butter, and this happens to be salted butter. I love cooking with salted butter. I think it has a little bit more flavor and it saves me a step. And I'm using a 1/2 stick. Now this has been sitting out for a few minutes and it's nice and spreadable. I like using softened butter versus the melted butter because melted butter is not always easy to control. But I want to spread this all over. Make sure you get it all the way out to the edges. And this butter works as a fabulous glue for our cinnamon and sugar filling that we made. Now it's time for this delicious sugar. Now I'm choosing to use a cup. If you want to use a little bit more, you certainly can. Oh, look how good this is already looking. Just want to smooth this all over. Make sure that it's even. And this is looking great. Now, here we go with the roll part of these cinnamon rolls. I'm going to lift up on the edges and I'm just going to fold this right over. And now I'm going to gently start rolling it. Don't be afraid. It's a lot easier than you might think. And now I'm just spreading out my hands and I'm gently rolling. See how easy this is? Y'all, it's not complicated. We basically have a cinnamon log. Yum, these are going to be so good. I have my 9 by 13 inch baking dish and I've sprayed it with some non-stick spray. Now I'm taking a good sharp knife and I'm going to start slicing this roll, and I am going to make 12 cinnamon rolls with this. Look at these. Isn't that beautiful? And I want to put the ugly side down. As I'm placing these in my baking dish, I'm taking that end and I'm tucking it down under the bottom. They're ready to go. These are going to sit for 30 minutes. I'm going to cover these loosely in some plastic wrap, and these are going to sit until they doubled in size. You can let them sit up to an hour if you like, if you get busy and you forget about them, but don't let them sit any longer than that. 30 minutes is really perfect. Just put them in a draft-free place and leave them alone. While those cinnamon rolls are baking, I'm going to go ahead and make the cream cheese frosting. Now I have a little bit of a different spin on my frosting, and I found that it's a time saver and it's absolutely delicious. Now I've got a whole block, 8 ounces of cream cheese in my dish, and let's see, this is 7 ounces of marshmallow cream, and this is going right in. One time I did not have any powdered sugar, and I just had an idea. What about marshmallow cream? Well, they fell in love with it, and so did I, and I've been making it this way ever since. Now this is going in the microwave for 30 seconds, and I want it to get soft enough to where I can blend it together. This looks good. Oh, I can hardly wait. My kitchen smells like Cinnabon right now. My husband is going to be elated when he finds that we have cinnamon rolls when we get home. Now I have a teaspoon of vanilla. I'm just going to stir this all together. See what putting it in the microwave does. It just makes it so much easier to blend. You don't need a mixer. It's easy as that. And this marshmallow cream adds such a great texture to this frosting. I just want a little taste. If you want it a little bit sweeter, then add 1/2 cup of powdered sugar and keep adding tablespoon at a time until you get it the sweetness that you like. Look at that. This is perfect for us. It's not too sweet, but just sweet enough. But like I said, add powdered sugar if you like it on the sweeter side. Do these look amazing or what? I can tell you this, they smell absolutely heavenly. I think my neighbors are going to start knocking on my door in a minute. You know how you're walking through the mall and you smell Cinnabon and that aroma just pulls you in? This, without a doubt, says breakfast is done. What I wouldn't give to have my boy with me. Now, as you see, I just took these out of the oven, and I like to put the frosting on them when they're hot. That way it gets down into the cracks, and it's just oh so good. And look, see that? That marshmallow cream just gives it that little fluff that you can't get from just sugar. Okay, y'all. Last spoonful. You could put some of this in one of those little solo cups and serve it to the kids or the grands with a little separate thing of frosting. That way they won't argue over who got the most. Now, the real test is about to happen. Which one do I want? Oh my goodness. Now, let's see. All I need is a hot cup of coffee to go with this. Look at that cinnamon, all that frosting, and look at that ooey gooey center. Oh my goodness. Y'all, this is absolute perfection. You just can't buy or make any better. These are perfect. I love the sweetness of the bread. It's sweet, but not too sweet. And this cream cheese frosting just complements it. Oh my goodness. Thanks so much for watching today. Y'all have got to try this recipe. It is an absolute winner. Will you press that like button? Share it with your friends. You are a blessing to me. I'm gonna go get that hot cup of coffee and finish off the cinnamon roll. And I have no doubts that my husband will not have any issues polishing off the rest of them. I'll see you next time.